Today we're going to finish up Romans chapter 2. Very interesting part of this chapter that teaches us something about religion versus true worship before a holy God. It's not the letter of the law that saves us, but it's the Spirit, what's really in the heart. Remember what Jesus said in John chapter 4 when he was talking to the woman at Samaria at Jacob's well. And she wanted to talk about the religion of her forefathers that she had been taught versus the religion of the Jews at Jerusalem. And Jesus finally came to the point where he says, true worship is from the heart. True worship is from truth. And those that worship God must worship Him in truth and in spirit. That is the kind of worshipers that God seeks. And really, Paul is dealing with exactly the same thing here in the end of this chapter when he begins in verse 17. But if you call yourself a Jew and rely on the law and boast in God, and you know His will and approve what is excellent because you are instructed from the law, and if you are sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of children, having in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth. He says, so then you who teach others, do you not teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say one must not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, you dishonor God by breaking the law. Now, here's what we're going to try to do in these next few minutes. And that is help us deal with this thing called religion of the head and religion through rituals, because that's what most of the world really has. Now, there are so many people that say, well, I hate religion. Religion has caused all the problems and difficulties and wars in the world. And so they just put everything in one basket, including Jesus Christ and the worship of God from the heart. They can't do that because Paul even here is deciphering and dividing between the two. There is religion that's from the head. There's religion that's from rituals. And that's what most of the world has. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it Judaism. You can call it Islam. You can even call it Christianity. Because there is a major part of Christianity, their faith, their hope is in their rituals, their sacraments, in their doing, rather than true worship from the heart. And so we really need to work on that today. And what I'll never forget, years ago, I went to the hospital to visit a man, ended up in the wrong room. Both men had exactly the same name, which was very interesting. And so I got into this room, and I don't think I ever get into a wrong room, really. And so I began talking to the gentleman, and I asked him where he went to church, and he said, well, he didn't go to church and hadn't been to church for years, and really wasn't much of a religious man. And I said, well, that's really good. And he looked at me and said, no, why are you saying that? You're a preacher. You believe in going to church and such. And I said, well, you know what? There are so many people that think going to church and going through the rituals and sacraments and ceremonies and ordinances at the church are going to get them to heaven. I said, well, you're not going to church for a fact. You're not going to have that problem. But that's what's keeping a lot of people from truly knowing an intimate, personal, heartfelt relationship with God, because they're dependent on their religion, their good deeds, and their works. And that's what Paul is pointing out in this chapter, especially the Jews versus the Gentiles. And he's saying to this Jewish people, you're no better because you yourself who have the law are breaking the law. And you need to know that true religion is from the heart. And so he says in the very last verse, but a real worshiper of God is one inwardly. And circumcision is a matter of the heart by the Spirit, not by the letter. And then His praise is not from men, but from God. And so God's looking on the heart today. Do you have a personal, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ, trusting Him to be your personal Lord and Savior from your heart and not just from your head, going through the religious rituals and ceremonies? May the Lord help us today to make sure that's the kind of faith and hope we have, not in rituals, not in religion, but in a Savior, Jesus Christ. God bless you as you truly trust Him today.